In today's world, where everything is loud, where people shout opinions into the void, post every fleeting emotion, and document every movement, there's something quietly terrifying about the man who doesn't react, who doesn't chase, who doesn't show his hunger. That man, the one who stays still when everyone else is scrambling, is often the most powerful in the room. Not because he's apathetic, but because he's mastered control. Being nonchalant doesn't mean you care about nothing. It means you choose what matters. You conserve your energy. You remain unreadable. It's not indifference. It's a strategic restraint. Machiavelli understood this well. To him, appearances were tools, sometimes even weapons. He believed a leader had to seem composed, especially when chaos was erupting all around. If people see your desperation, your urgency, your need, they know exactly where to strike. But if you reveal nothing, if your eyes stay calm, your voice remains measured, and your movements show no tension, they can't pin you down, and what can't be understood becomes dangerous. The man who practices nonchalance doesn't spill emotions everywhere. He speaks with purpose. He acts with precision. He doesn't fill the silence just to escape discomfort. His restraint creates presence. While most people chase validation, are quick to respond to slights, gossip, or social pressure, the nonchalant man doesn't move. He observes. He waits. And in doing so, he becomes the enigma. The question everyone can't stop asking themselves: why isn't he reacting? Why doesn't he care? Why doesn't he chase? That confusion? It becomes leverage. You see, people are drawn to mystery. The predictable fades into the background. But the unknown commands attention. Machiavelli never advocated for open transparency. He believed a ruler should hide his intentions, and that's exactly what nonchalance allows you to do. You feel everything, but you show nothing. You think deeply, but you appear calm. You may care intensely, but the world will never know. When you're nonchalant, you dictate the emotional tempo. People have to guess what you're thinking, guess what you want. You give them no obvious cues, no emotional tells. They're forced to navigate around you, and in the process, they reveal themselves. You remain a mystery, untouched, unread, powerful. This is psychological leverage. The one who needs the least often controls the most. Because when you appear to need nothing, people scramble to offer something. When you don't pursue, they start chasing. When you remain calm, they become unsettled. But don't get it twisted. This calm isn't natural. It's trained. The nonchalant man has spent years mastering the pause. He's learned to delay reaction. He's created a space between what he feels and what he expresses. He knows that urgency doesn't equal power. Visibility doesn't equal influence. He doesn't move for attention. He moves when it matters. And when he does, the room turns to watch. Respect doesn't come to the man who begs for it. Dignity isn't found in pleading for recognition. The truly confident man, who is truly composed, will often appear as if he cares less, even when he feels deeply, because he understands that emotion is a kind of currency, and he spends it sparingly, wisely. People respect what they can't predict, what they can't read, what they can't dominate. The nonchalant man becomes a symbol of discipline in a world that runs on impulse. He's the one who doesn't shout to be seen, but is seen nonetheless. He's the calm in the chaos, the one who observes silently, who listens when others rant, who acts when others stall. And in a society addicted to noise, that quiet is unforgettable. If this shifts your idea of confidence, good. Because real power is quiet. It's subtle. It's deliberate. And if you've seen this kind of presence before, whether in a mentor, a leader, or even someone you couldn't quite figure out, then you've felt the weight it carries. Tell me in the comments how you've experienced nonchalance in your life. Nonchalance isn't born from arrogance. It's born from clarity. The man who sees doesn't flinch. He doesn't need to prove anything. He already knows how the game ends. He's accepted what he can influence and what he can't. He's found peace inside, so the outside doesn't shake him. This isn't about being cold. It's about being untouchable. Most people carry their insecurity like a badge. They apologize before they speak. They overshare. They look for approval before they've done anything to earn it. But the nonchalant man? He doesn't look for eyes in the room. He doesn't shift to fit in. He stands like he belongs, because he's already decided that he does. That kind of confidence, it's unsettling. It exposes everyone around him, because while they're trying to prove something, he proves nothing. He simply exists. Still, sure, unmoved. In a culture obsessed with attention and drama, the man who remains calm becomes the center of gravity. And just like Machiavelli said, it's not enough to be strong. You have to appear strong. Likewise, it's not enough to feel composed. You have to look like nothing phases you. That perception becomes truth. If others believe you're in control, they start adjusting to you. They second-guess themselves. They reflect. You don't even have to say much. You just need to master your expression. Your stillness speaks louder than their shouting ever could. And here's the key. Nonchalance isn't a mask you put on. It's not some fake act to win people over. It's the natural result of mastering yourself, of letting go of impulse, of no longer chasing things that don't matter. It's a quiet rebellion in a world that demands reaction. You've probably felt the pressure to always speak, always move, always assert yourself. But real power doesn't ask for attention. It commands it by not needing it. The man who moves slowly, who speaks with intent, who lets silence stretch long enough to make people uncomfortable, that man shifts the room. And that energy? It's rare. It's not for everyone. It's for the few who've learned that strength is not just about domination, it's about restraint. There's a deep, quiet power in doing less. Every time you withhold an emotional reaction, you take back a piece of your power. Every time you let someone else reveal themselves, while you remain still, you gain insight. And insight? That's the true currency of advantage. People might call it cold. They might say you're distant. But the nonchalant man isn't moved by the misunderstanding. He's not here to be liked. He's here to win. And winning, at least in the Machiavellian sense, isn't about being the loudest. It's about outlasting, outmaneuvering, outwitting. Don't mistake nonchalance for passivity. This isn't weakness. It's patience with teeth. It's a form of focused detachment that only the disciplined can hold. It says, I'm not threatened by your actions. I don't need to prove anything. I'm not afraid to let silence speak on my behalf. In every room, there's one man who doesn't compete. He doesn't jump into every conversation. He doesn't rush to be heard. And when he finally does speak, it matters. Because his words aren't replacing silence. They're earning the space they take. That's why he owns the room. You might feel pressure to always assert yourself, to always have something to say, to be visible. But the truth is, those who are truly confident don't need the spotlight. They don't exercise their power. They just carry it. And that quiet presence, it's more commanding than any loud display. Nonchalance gets mistaken for arrogance all the time. But it's not about ego, it's about mastery. Mastery of timing, mastery of presence, mastery of expression. It's the ability to feel deeply and show nothing. To be fully aware and fully engaged, while looking like you're somewhere else. And that illusion, the illusion that you don't need anything, creates gravity. People are drawn to what pulls away. They chase what doesn't chase them back. They obsess over what ignores them. They try to win over what doesn't need their approval. This is the paradox of power. The less you reveal, the more people imagine. The less you pursue, the more they chase. The less you say, the more weight your words carry when you finally speak. The nonchalant man isn't quiet because he has nothing to say. He's quiet because most things aren't worth saying. He doesn't spread himself thin. He doesn't let his presence become cheap. He waits. And when he moves, it's intentional. Machiavelli once warned that the appearance of virtue is often more useful than virtue itself. In the same way, the appearance of indifference is often more powerful than true indifference. A man who truly feels nothing, he's numb, and numbness is weakness. But a man who feels everything and filters it with discipline, that man is untouchable. He can sit across from the conflict, from insult, from temptation, and still choose silence. You don't owe the world your emotions. You don't owe strangers your vulnerability. To be nonchalant, is to reclaim the right to decide what matters. What enters your energy? When you respond, and when you don't. That's real confidence. Not loudness, not confrontation, but control. Watch what happens when you stop reacting. Watch how people panic in silence. Watch how they scramble to fill the space. How they over-explain. How they confess too much. Why? Because they can't stand not knowing what you're thinking. That silence, it becomes leverage. You don't have to manipulate anyone. You just have to not react. They will reveal everything. And no, this isn't about playing games. It's about taking control of emotional space, psychological space. If someone lashes out and you remain calm, they lose their grip. If someone insults you and you stay steady, they feel the sting. If someone pulls away and you don't chase, they start to question themselves. That's the foundation of power. Not domination, not controlled, discipline. Because the man who doesn't flinch has spent years training that stillness. He's faced his fears, privately. He's been tested, betrayed, and humiliated, and he didn't break. He learned to respond, not react. And there's a big difference. Reaction is cheap. Response is rare. Reaction is emotion. Response is a strategy. The nonchalant man lives in response. He knows what he wants, but he's not desperate. He knows his value, so he doesn't sell himself. He knows who he is, so he doesn't perform. And that quiet certainty, it radiates. It doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. But here's the real test. Can you sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood? Can you hold your ground when someone misjudges you? Can you keep your plan to yourself even when your ego wants to brag? That's the price of poise, the cost of power, the discipline of nonchalance. There will be moments when silence feels like weakness, when walking away feels like losing. But remember this, most people are slaves to their emotions. They react quickly, loudly, predictably, and that noise, that's what makes them easy to control, easy to replace. But the man who stays calm, he's unforgettable. Because in a world addicted to stimulation, that stillness feels unnatural. That restraint, dominant. People never forget how you made them feel. And being around someone who doesn't flinch, who doesn't need, who doesn't chase, that feeling is unsettling, but also magnetic. It draws them in, not because you're fighting for attention, but because you don't. That's how you shift the frame, not by trying to convince anyone, but by becoming the standard, by holding presence, by choosing your moment. Because in every conversation, every room, every relationship, there's power in being the one who listens more than he speaks, the one who waits, the one who already knows the outcome and doesn't need to prove a thing. That's nonchalance, and that's why it works. There's a reason the most powerful people in the world speak last. There's a reason the strongest men don't raise their voices. When you've truly mastered your presence, your silence becomes a weapon. You no longer need to jump into debates. You don't have to prove you belong. You simply are. And when the noise fades, when the room settles, it's you they look to. Calm, clear, unshaken. The nonchalant man isn't in a rush. He's not trying to win a popularity contest. He understands the world is frantic by default, and people are reactive, impulsive, and insecure. They chase trends, attention, applause. But when you rise above all of that, when you look like none of it moves you, you become magnetic. Not because you shout, but because you don't need to. Machiavelli understood this balance. He knew a ruler must be feared more than loved, but without becoming hated. Nonchalance walks that razor's edge with precision. It commands respect without ever asking for it. It holds authority without needing to dominate. Because power built on mystery lasts longer than power built on noise. And here's what makes it work. Scarcity. When you speak, your words hit harder, not because they're louder, but because they're rare. When you move, your actions feel heavier, not because they're grand, but because they're intentional. The nonchalant man doesn't waste himself. Every word, every glance, every moment of attention is calculated. And that makes his presence feel sacred. People crave certainty. They want someone who makes them feel grounded, secure. The nonchalant man gives them that, not with endless reassurance, but through quiet strength. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't beg to be understood. He just is. And that stillness, it builds trust. Even when people don't know why, they feel it. You have to become the eye of the storm, the calm center in a chaotic world, not by pretending to be above it all, but by actually mastering your reactions. Every time you hold your tongue instead of speaking, you gain more control. Every time you walk away instead of reacting, you grow stronger. Why? Because most people follow every emotional impulse like it's a command. But you lead your emotions. You rule them. That's why the nonchalant man owns the room, because he owns himself. Even in relationships, this kind of emotional sovereignty is everything. It's not about manipulation. It's not about playing cold games or withholding love. It's about being centered, being able to care without clinging, to love without losing your identity, to show up fully without being fully exposed. That tension, that polarity, is magnetic. People are drawn to someone who doesn't need them, who's already whole, already settled, who doesn't pretend to be softer just to be accepted. The nonchalant man isn't unkind. He's simply unshaken. His peace isn't a strategy. It's not a trick. It's a state of being, earned through quiet battles, through solitude, through choosing discipline over indulgence, clarity over comfort. That kind of inner victory, it can't be faked, and it can't be stolen. Machiavelli once said that fortune favors the bold, but boldness isn't always loud. Sometimes, boldness is refusing to take the bait, refusing to be provoked, refusing to stoop to the level of someone trying to pull you into chaos. That refusal, that unflinching calm, is one of the boldest things a man can practice. Because make no mistake, the world will test you. It will misunderstand you, dismiss you, try to shake you. It will tempt you to explain, to defend, to lash out. But the real test? It's not how loud you can push back. It's whether you can keep walking, silent, focused, composed. That's what makes you rare. That's what makes you respected. Not the noise you create, but the calm you keep. Not the validation you chase, but the gravity you carry. You don't become nonchalant by accident. It's something you build, through intention, through pain, through clarity. Real power doesn't make noise. It doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't justify itself. It moves silently, deliberately, unshakably. That is the essence of true nonchalance. Not pretending not to care, but being so deeply rooted in self-mastery that the world can't shake you. It's not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of control. The ability to hold emotional tension without breaking. To hear an insult without reacting. To feel pressure without panic. The nonchalant man feels everything, but responds only to what matters. And that kind of discipline? That is the highest form of self-respect. You have to understand, nonchalance is earned. It doesn't come naturally. We're born craving validation, born wanting to be liked, born needing to be understood. But the man who rises above those impulses, who chooses composure, who watches more than he reacts, that man becomes untouchable. Not because the world stops testing him, but because he stops flinching. Machiavelli knew that power was theater, that perception shaped influence. If you appear desperate, you'll be treated as weak. If you appear calm, you'll be seen as capable. If you appear detached, you'll be feared. And the nonchalant man plays this role better than anyone. But here's the twist. It's not a performance. His stillness isn't an act. It's a habit. It's who he is in public, in private, under pressure, or alone. That consistency, that's what builds trust. That's what builds control. When people realize they can't get a reaction out of you, they begin to question themselves. They adjust. They reflect, because you've become a mirror. And in your calm, they see their chaos. That's how you rise, without saying a word. This isn't about thinking you're better. It's about being sovereign, ruling your own space, owning your energy, designing your presence, choosing when to speak, when to move, when to reveal. You're never dragged into a situation. You're never forced to expose your emotions, because you've built a world inside yourself that can't be touched. The nonchalant man isn't afraid to be misunderstood. He knows that mystery holds more power than clarity, that silence is more commanding than noise, that suggestion is more seductive than an explanation. He doesn't beg to be known. He doesn't barter his strength for sympathy. He lets people wonder, assume, project, and while they talk, he remains still. Stillness creates contrast, and contrast is power. In a world of talkers, the quiet man is dangerous. In a world of reaction, the man who pauses is unpredictable. In a world of noise, silence becomes a presence all its own, and that presence lingers long after the moment ends. Because people don't remember everything you said, they remember how you made them feel. And being in the presence of someone who doesn't need, doesn't chase, doesn't flinch, that feeling stays with them. That's gravity. That's dominance. You want to be respected? Then stop performing. Stop explaining. Stop reacting to every demand for your attention. Start observing. Start withholding. Start measuring your energy like it's the most valuable thing you have, because it is. The man who remains composed under pressure, who reveals nothing, who lets others go first and responds last, that man holds real power. Not the flashy kind that fades, but the kind that lasts, the kind that builds empires, that bends perception, that shifts the emotional tone of every room he walks into. So remember this. Nonchalance is not about caring less. It's about caring, right? It's about directing your energy with surgical precision, staying grounded when others lose their balance, remaining silent when the world is desperate for a reaction. It's sharp. It's strategic. Its strength is that it doesn't need to shout. It's not for the weak. It's not for the needy. It's for the man who's faced chaos and refused to blink, who's mastered himself so thoroughly that now the world has no choice but to follow his lead. So be nonchalant, not to appear powerful, but because you already are.